You just made me think of there's times you go out and people say, "What do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I work for Fandango." It's nice to be able to kind of just have that in your back pocket. I work for Fandango.
Yeah, man.
This is 1934. Gangsters, submachine guns. And you put cowboys on Bonnie and Clyde?
Texas Rangers.
All right, so this is a project that's been in development for many years, and I think it's kind of badass that Paul Newman and Robert Redford originally were going to be in these roles. Is that something you guys ever thought about, maybe made you smile a little bit?
We always thought we'd do better. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's pretty cool. Is that really true?
Yeah, it is true. I heard their name, and 10 years ago
cool.
it came to me, and then it drifted off, and then it circled back. So yeah, listen, a lot of movies. I've had good luck with movies that take a long time to get made.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they ring a little different. People are unsure. Studios are unsure. They're not what's happening at the moment, at the time, and so a lot of the great movies have languished.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things I find so fascinating about this film is that you guys actually shot in the specific location where Bonnie and Clyde were killed. What was that day like for you guys? Did it amplify the experience? Did it amplify your performances in any way?
Yeah, I think we both had a real strong reaction to it because as an actor, you're using a lot of imagination. But when you're right on the spot with the final moment of Bonnie and Clyde's final breaths were taken, it really it amplifies.
Yeah, I think amplified is a really good word. You know, you understood kind of the native strategy behind all of it. And you understood that at the moment that car that they'd finally been waiting for was coming, it was going to go down in about 40 seconds.
Mm-hmm. You know, Frank Hamer was a guy that did not like to talk about sort of his work. What did you look to sort of inform your performance of him?
Well, they made a pact that none of them would talk after that because killing a woman was a hard thing to kind of deal with, and they were guys that they didn't think of themselves heroically. I think that they really just did their job. But when it was over, they all kind of agreed, let's not talk about this, you know. And that's why versions came out, you know, and probably the worst versions came out when relatives started to get jealous, thinking that their father, who was involved in this, was being slighted somehow.
Yeah.
But I think the men themselves had a bond. They understood what it was they were doing.
You know, considering that, you know, that those circumstances, did you feel sort of a greater duty to sort of tell this story as honest and authentic as you could?
Yeah.
I think that big part of that, conscientiousness about the facts of the story was involved in this. You know, it's still really, I think, wonderfully entertaining, if I may say. but I think, you know, getting the facts right was kind of important.
You know, you've played the psychopathic killer in the past in a movie that was in many ways inspired by Bonnie and Clyde. Does playing a psychopath inform your performance of a man who's on the hunt for one at all?
Sure.
Tell him what he wants to hear, what he's after us. Tell him exactly what he wants to hear. I know this kind of guy.
He's after.
This has to end.
They've committed dozens of armed robberies and several cold-blooded murders.
What do you plan to do about Bonnie and Clyde?
We will capture them. Write that down and underline it twice.
I think a lot of people are going to watch this movie and have no idea that Texas had a female governor.
I didn't.
In the 1920s.
No, me neither.
How cool is that?
It's very cool. My mom was born in 1907. I think she would have made a great governor of Texas or Tennessee. So the fact that in those days that, you know, jobs were limited for women especially, that she rose to power is nothing short of a miracle.
I thought it was so interesting when I was reading about her that she kind of used her husband, who was a former governor, and sort of saying, yeah, I'm just going to kind of do his work, you know, to kind of convince people.
Yeah, one governor for the price.
Yes,
two, you
exactly.
know? Two governors for the price of one.
And she's so interesting and fascinating. We don't get a ton of her in this film, but like in reading about her and learning about her, what's something unique about her life maybe that we don't see in the movie.
Well, I didn't know that she loathed the Texas Rangers and that she was actually in the process with her Ferguson men, who were much more modern with their cars and their machine guns and their walkie-talkies and so forth. And Hoover, came and created the FBI the year after they got Bonnie and Clyde. So the country was really changing, and she looked at these guys as totally antiquated. In fact, when in the couple of years that she wasn't in power in between her 2 terms, he retired. He kept his commission, Hamer did, but he loathed her. She just felt that they were antiquated. She didn't appreciate the fact that they could track. She just thought that was like, 1800s crap. And plus the fact that they just did what they wanted to do without her being able to control them.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it's the old school kind of traits that
Totally
lead to it.
Well, her guys didn't have the ability to do that. They didn't know what they were doing.
Why do you feel like this is an important story maybe to tell right now?
Well, I think it's a wonderful comment on celebrity, isn't it? I mean, and it took place in the Depression. I mean, we're not technically in a depression, but there are people that are hurting, and I think I know I do. It's like if I don't want to pay any attention to the news because it's just overwhelming, I sit in front of the TV and watch Netflix or Amazon, or it's like what's on? I've got to escape for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very much part of that, and they were such icons, and I think people back then looked at them as Robin Hood, and they were their heroes. They were glamorous. She was having an illicit affair, was in all the magazines, and it was huge.
I think it's wild. Thousands of people showed up for their
20,000
funeral,
people went to her funeral. 15 went to his.
which is just wild.
Well, even after they were shot, people were already clamoring around the car and trying to cut pieces of her bloody hair, and there was a guy trying to cut his trigger finger off, and crazy stuff.
I thought it was so interesting that they actually shot that scene when they finally catch Bonnie and Clyde and wind up killing them. They shot that in the same spot.
I know. Wasn't that something?
That's
I
crazy.
didn't know that until last night when John Lee said that. And I know Woody and Kevin were kind of like, they knew, of course, and it just added an extra feeling of, oh my God, this is real. This really happened.
One of the things I love about your career is you play a lot of strong women, a lot of women that sort of know what they want, know how to get it. What attracts you to that? And do you pull from them throughout your life, throughout your career, when you're playing a new character? Do you pull sort of traits or dip back into your past at all and say, oh, I liked how I played this character, I'm going to maybe do that a little bit with this one?
That's an interesting question. I guess I do. That it's interesting that there's, for me, and I think it's probably true of other actors, that when you get a role, it's like already inside you start percolating, and you start bringing, as you say, different aspects. Oh, that reminds me. And Daniel Day-Lewis gave a class at Juilliard recently, and a friend of mine that I was working with, Aaron Moten, and he had a friend there at Juilliard, and they were like, tell me what he's saying, And one of the first things he said was, your first ideas, just write them down. Don't do anything about it yet, because you don't know enough. So there is a lot of, Jessica Tandy used to call it your kitchen work, and that you weren't ready yet to serve the soup, so to speak. But it's almost on a molecular level. You start, getting ideas. Oh, in the middle of a conversation, you say, wait a minute. And now with your phone, you can just go, and you get it on there on your notepad and then start thinking about it in different ways.
This has gone far enough. I'm gonna take them down.
What a fine idea.
Who are you fellas? Suppose we're the bad guys.
Everybody knows the story of Bonnie and Clyde. Why do you think this was an important story to tell about the apprehension of Bonnie and Clyde, and why right now?
Well, I mean, I first read the script 13 years ago when John Fusco and Casey Silver sent it to me to gauge my interest in directing. And I thought, my first thought was, oh, Bonnie and Clyde, I love Penn's movie. I've seen other movies. Why do this? And when I read it, I realized it was switching the camera over, to the Texas Rangers that came out of retirement. And I thought the themes involved were contemporary then. I think they're contemporary now. But I was just drawn into the idea of these two men who have a terrible gift.
One of the things I love about the film is that, Bonnie and Clyde, they're celebrities. People, kind of adored them. I mean, thousands of people showed up at their funeral, but you don't see them, really. You keep them shadowy. Why did you make that choice to sort of not show us Bonnie and Clyde
Well,
as much?
first, it was John's conceit. I think he says in there, you never quite get a good look at him. And then so when I started thinking about it, I wanted to shoot them in a non-naturalistic way. I wanted it to be like a graphic novel where the colors pop and the frames are interesting and the cars are sexy and shiny, so that hopefully we as a viewer would fall under the sway of the mythology of Bonnie and Clyde and think of them as bigger than life and romanticize them. So at the end, in the ambush, when they are then shot in a natural way, we realize they're skinny kids.
And talk about, you shot some of this stuff in the actual locations, I believe, including that death scene. You went to the actual spot in the road where that happened?
We did. We first were looking at it just for a historical basis so that we could find another location that kind of seemed to fit. But when you got there, you looked at the way the road undulated and how the car would appear around, a copse of trees, and the length of time it would take for the car to get to the spot, and you can just feel the roller coaster ride of going click, 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 and then. And I thought, wow, this is going to be hard to find. And then Casey Silver, our brilliant producer, said, well, what if we just shot it here? And, it was like the eureka moment. And we did. And it was eerie and creepy. And I don't know. It was the right decision for sure, but it was creepy.
I imagine was there kind of, did you feel like a certain vibe? Did everybody there feel sort of this weirdness and this oddness of that moment?
They did, and I think especially the actors who are holding the guns and they're going to be firing at this car that's coming. I think they got amped up, probably not unlike the posse that was there in 1934.
Frank Hamer notoriously didn't ever want to talk about himself. There's a moment where somebody tries to interview him, and he kind of, Woody Harrelson's character, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
So is that hard to sort of find out who this guy was when he notoriously did not ever want to talk about who he was?
Well, the posse made a pact, among themselves that we're not going to talk about this.
Yeah.
There's nothing good that comes from talking about a horrible death, and no one should ever make a dime off of it. And he was old school that way. There have been many books written about Frank Hamer and about the Texas Rangers and about Bonnie and Clyde. And you can do a search of history and you could make 10 movies about Frank Hamer's life. There's a recent book that came out that's about Frank Hamer, and it's just fascinating.
Now, if people watch this film and they walk away and they want to learn more about the Rangers, they want to maybe learn more about Hamer, what would you recommend sort of as a complimentary to this film to sort of go experience after you watch it?
Oh gosh, well I would say the first thing people tell me is they go to Google immediately and start pulling up every document they can to find out, is this true? Did this happen? Did Texas really have a female governor in 1934? So they start with your internet search, and then there are many really good books and lots of photography on the internet as well that you can look at.